Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where Karens seem to think that everyone is an employee and meant to serve them. And in this episode, holy cow, guys, Karens are at it again. And Opie encounters a situation that he'll never forget after a Karen accuses him of kidnapping her. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. Here's some backstory. This happened years ago. In the winter of 2017, my family went on a huge road trip from California all the way to Arizona and Nevada, where we were going to spend just a few nights to celebrate my dad's birthday and see a David Copperfield show. We ate dinner at an adjoining restaurant called the Wolfgang Puck. Then my parents left my sister and I, who were 14 and 16 at the time, to go to their hotel room, and told us to bring back some dessert within the hour. We got a Black Forest chocolate cake and some rum and raisin ice cream, and we headed back upstairs, along with the leftover food from dinner. When we reached the 8th floor, we stepped out, and we began walking to our room, which was down the hall and to the right. Just as we turned the corner, a door to our left opened. An irate-looking woman stepped out, tapping her foot impatiently and staring expectantly at us. She says to us, "Finally, it should not take you over an hour to deliver some goddamn cake." I try to speak up and say, what do you mean?" The woman then grabs for the food I'm carrying, and she screams, "Give those here. I'm a paying customer, and I won't stand for you to give me excuses." I say to her, "Hey, what are you doing? That's my food." I jerk back, and my sister's already several feet back, looking worried. The Karen says, "Listen, I don't want to hear your excuses. Another word out of either of you, and I'll have you reported." Now, I hate when random people scream at me for no reason. So I decide to fight back and say, "What the ever-loving F are you on about? We are effing guests at this hotel, and you'd better stay the F back, you psycho." At this point, a waiter comes around the corner. In front of him is a huge cart that's literally piled with food. The waiter says, "Hey, I hear yelling. Is something wrong?" Now, before I can get a word in, the Karen says, "Your dumbass employees not only came 1 hour late with my food, but they're now being argumentative and refusing to give me the food. Are you in charge around here? I want them reprimanded." The waiter then turns to me and says, "Is what she's saying..." He then stops mid-sentence, realizing that he's talking to a 5'3" teenager whose voice hasn't even cracked yet. The waiter then says, "Ma'am, I don't know who you think these people are, but they're not waiters. They have food, yes, but that's from the Wolfgang Puck. It's not even where you ordered food from." The woman tries to interrupt, but he cuts her off and says, "I know because I have your food right here." At this point, Karen goes pretty rad, and she shuts up right away. After that, the waiter told us to wait a bit further down the hall, and finished up giving the lady her dessert. He then came back to us and escorts us to our rooms, and for the most part, that was the end of that. We did get some free breakfast cards, but we were leaving for a lunch engagement before the drive home, and there was no time to use them. Holy Karen, was that woman so hungry that she couldn't even think anymore? How can you possibly mistake two teenagers for hotel staff? And you know what, I'm gonna be honest guys, I would be pretty darn angry too if my food came 1 hour late. However, I in a million years would never ever act the way Karen did. There's never an excuse to get that aggressive towards someone, let alone a complete stranger. And another thing, just judging by how entitled she was guys, I wouldn't be surprised if she ordered the food 5 minutes before, and was exaggerating to try to cause a scene because, you know, Karens. So here's some backstory, I guess. This happened a few weeks ago. My neighbor has a super nice kid that's in the 9th grade. He's 14 years old, and he's got a nickname. We call him Tank. The kid is big and tall, and he's, built like a tank, hence why we call him Tank. With that said, my neighbor texted me in the afternoon while I was at work, asking if I could pick up her kid. I said sure, since I don't mind getting him. So it's about 3:30 in the afternoon, and I pick up Tank from school. And as I'm pulling out, I get a text from his mom asking me to pick up a few things from the store. The store that was closest to the school was Target. Now, one thing to note about Tank's school uniform is it's a maroon top and khaki bottoms. So we get to Target, and I tell him to just wear a sweatshirt, which was red and white, the school colors, and had the school mascot on it, which is a knight. Overall, he looks like your average 14-year-old kid. But did that stop people from asking him where things were, why this cash register was closed, why the product was out of stock, and to check the back like a good employee? The short answer is no, but before Tank could say anything, I would respond with, "He's my brother, we're shopping, goodbye." Now 90% of the people would just walk away, but there was a few people who would huff and tell me, well, you shouldn't interfere with his work. Like, what part of "we are shopping" did they not understand? I also called him my brother to spare him the embarrassment of saying that I'm his babysitter. I've known Tank long enough to treat him as my brother, and this continued on through our trip in the store. And I swear, once people enter Target, they lose all their brain cells. Like, how do you confuse a child with a clear school uniform on for a Target employee, which are mostly college kids where I'm from? So we get the shopping done with what feels like the millionth person asking, "Where's the milk?" When I guess one of the higher-ups, like a supervisor or something, comes up to us and laser-locked his focus on me. The guy says to me, "Are you interfering with your brother's work?" I say to him, "Not really. How many times do I have to say this? He's my brother and we're shopping for our mother. Leave us alone." The guy says to me, "Well, I can't do that. He's being paid to work. You need to leave and he needs to get back to work." I say to him, "Buddy, I don't know what's going on, but Tank here goes to a fancy Catholic school. He's too young to work." The supervisor tells me, "Well, we got kids from that school too." I say to him, "So? He's 14, he's in middle school, he can't even drive." It then became this back and forth of he can't even drive and I don't care, you got him in so much trouble, blah blah blah. I hate Target. Eventually, I just got tired and I paid for the things and dragged poor Tank out of the store. And oh yes, I did pull a Karen and demanded to speak to the manager for the guy being such an ass and not knowing his own employees. The manager did apologize, saying it didn't occur to him that he was talking to a customer, to which he then said to me, "It's been a stressful day, and it's a Monday, you know how it is." I say to him, "Yeah, Mondays suck, but please refrain from doing that again. Other people might not be as nice as me." So yeah, that was my little "I don't work here" encounter. So yeah guys, it boggles my mind when supervisors and floor managers can't tell who's an employee or not. And honestly, if you're a higher up and you can't tell the difference between a store uniform and an outfit that's a similar color to the store's uniform, that happens to have a school mascot on it, oh goodness, should you even be in that position? And another thing guys, like there's absolutely nothing Karen about what OP did. Like just because you asked to speak to a manager doesn't immediately make you a Karen. In my opinion, OP did pull the manager card correctly and appropriately, which a lot of Karens fail to do. So I was born and raised in Mexico, and this happened some years ago. I went with some friends to an area well known for being a tourist center. In that place, there was a mall, so one of my friends wanted to buy a new swimsuit. While we were looking at the clothes, I saw a boy holding a really cool hoodie. I asked him where he got it, but the boy didn't speak Spanish. He was happy though when I told him I spoke English. The boy told me the hoodie was his own, not from the store. We then spoke for a while and then said goodbye to keep shopping. I separated from my friends to look for a hat while they looked for swimsuits, and that's when I heard it, the ahem that years of working in retail had taught me to recognize. But this time, it was different. The darkness and entitlement were at a totally different level. I turned to see the woman. She was crossing her arms and looking at me as if I insulted her entire family. She was not that type of Karen you'd see in my country. She was an authentic American Karen. She then says to me, "Well, are you finished? How much longer do I have to wait for you? My son's been waiting and you're here doing nothing. Now do your job and help my son." Hearing that, I was stunned for a moment. Like this woman's level of entitlement was something new to me. And I didn't look like an employee at all. I was wearing a sleeveless shirt with a metal band's name on it, a trucker hat with the image of the Triforce, camouflage shorts, and sneakers. The store's uniform was a light blue polo and gray pants with black shoes. The woman turns around and began to walk, and I did the same, but in the opposite direction. After a moment, I felt a tug on my ponytail, and I heard her say, "I gave you an order." I then turned around quickly, throwing a bunch of curses in Spanish at her and barely containing the desire to kick this woman. But it seems that she was more offended by the fact that I spoke Spanish in my own country. The Karen says to me, "Speak English. I saw you speaking with that boy, so don't you try to pretend now." I say to her, "I don't work here, now leave me alone before I call the police." At that, Karen's jaw dropped before she began to scream at me. I managed to get out of that hallway to a more open area of the store before she pushed me to block my way, and she starts a tantrum. Since she spoke quickly, I couldn't understand everything she said, but she yelled how people like me have no manners, how she would ruin my life, how she would fire me, she would sue me, and she would even go after my manager and we would have to apologize on our knees. At this point, an employee, a manager, and 2 security guards approached us. The American Karen then began a story of abuse by an incompetent employee, and how her son was just waiting for help, and how I threatened her and almost knocked her down with a punch that she barely avoided. The manager then told the employee in Spanish to bring the video, and Karen was offended by our language again. She shouts, "Do not speak Mexican in front of me." When the manager tried to explain that I didn't work there, she insisted that I did work there, that I can speak English, so obviously I do work there, that she could not conceive any reason why someone would learn another language if it wasn't to work in a tourist area. Finally, the employee brought a tablet, where after watching the video, the manager asked security to remove the Karen, and ordered her to leave or face the police. After a moment of yelling, she left, but she returns a few minutes later. Apparently, she remembered that she was a mother, and she began to threaten to sue the store for kidnapping her son. She had forgotten her son in the changing rooms, and the boy just sat there playing on his Nintendo. The woman tried to argue about who was to blame for her son being left alone, but the manager just stopped and called the police, and this definitely scared her away. And that was my encounter with a true American Karen that I hope to never repeat. Guys, it truly baffles me when people travel to other countries and expect everyone to cater to them. Like, for that woman to think that all people in the world are expected to learn English to accommodate her is so freaking entitled. And for her to assume that she had any power whatsoever in regards to another person's job in another country is not only entitled, but that woman is freaking delusional, guys. And speaking of Karens trying to get people fired, this next one, oh boy, strap yourselves in. So this just happened, and I'm still confused. I'm one of those people that like to do their pre-shopping, to budget things out the day before I get paid. I am also one of those people that like to dress in nicer casual clothing when I'm going out, but I in no way look like I work at a grocery store. So I was at the grocery store making a list of what I'd need for the week. I had my headphones in and I was listening to some music while I was walking around with a calculator and a notebook in hand. Budgeting is important, people. Now, I wasn't expecting anyone to bother me today, so I was bobbling along, doing my thing, looking at the meats in the deli. The deli wasn't busy, so there wasn't a visible worker anywhere. I didn't mind. I didn't need anyone to help me at that very moment, and they have a call button if they were needed. So there I am, standing, writing down the price per gram of some garlic sausage, when I have an earbud ripped out of my ear, violently, and suddenly I'm being screamed at. Of course, I'm now pissed, and I wheel around to see a mini soccer mom with way too much perfume on, berating me. The woman screams at me, "How are you supposed to help customers when you have headphones in? I've been trying to get your attention for 15 minutes. I cut her off before she could say anything else and say, "First off, don't you ever do that again. It's beyond rude. Second, what the hell do you want so badly that you felt it was okay to walk up and assault a stranger in a grocery store?" The Karen blinks in confusion before doubling down on her stupidity. The woman says to me, "What I want is some damn service, and you're the only one here. Now go back there and get me some smoked ham before I call a manager and get your ass fired." I reply, "What makes you think you can actually get anyone fired? What makes you think you're so important that on your say you can ruin someone's life and take away their paycheck? And what makes you think I work here?" Now here's some small background. I used to work in retail, and on behalf of all retail workers, what Karen said next is just wrong. No, the customer is not always right. They are, more often than not, wrong. Karen then says to me, "Because the customer is always right. That's why. Now do your job." I say to her, "No, they're not. They're almost always wrong because they have no idea what they're talking about past their own wants." Now, I'm gonna say this slow because obviously you're half blind and more than a little stupid. I do not work here. Look at me. All of this, of course, attracted a deli manager. His appearance wasn't very effective though, as Karen was still attempting to get me go behind the counter to use the slicers that I have no idea how to use. He piped up while Karen was mid-rant and he says, "What seems to be the issue here?" Karen says, "Finally, I demand this little piece of crap be fired, and that you give me ham free of charge because of her incompetence." I just stood there looking annoyed, waiting for what I figured was about to happen, tapping my toe and looking at the manager. The deli manager says to her, "Ma'am, she doesn't work here." Karen finally looks at me and she really takes in my appearance. You can tell that the wheel's turning, but I guess the hamster's dead because she again demands me to be fired. This time with less conviction, as she's still trying to wrap her brain around how a random person is not actually a deli worker and might actually be another customer. The deli manager says, again, she's not an employee. I can't just fire someone because one customer said so. That's not how jobs work. Hearing that, Karen's sounding much less sure of herself, and she says, but the customer is always right. I say to Karen, well then ma'am, you're one of a kind because you are very much wrong here. I don't work here, I'm shopping, and you're lucky I don't call cops and press charges against you. Next time, don't go up to anyone and pull out their earbuds. And if you want help, do everyone a favor before flying off the deep end and actually look around before harassing some random person. And at that, I just walked out and went home. No idea what happened, and honestly, I don't care. Honestly, guys, in my opinion, OP should have totally called the cops in that situation. See how police officers interpret the customer's always right after the customer assaults someone. This happened a few years ago. Uber was already big, but not as big as it is now. I was picking up my girlfriend at the airport that day. Our nearest airport is in a major city, so it's always hectic picking someone up. The cops/yellow vest traffic guys do not like you waiting around at all. So I get there, and it's taking my girlfriend a few minutes longer to get her checked bag than we anticipated. I'm on the phone with her, and she says, I see it, I've gotta go, don't leave. Right as she says that, the traffic vest guy is waving at me. I roll down my window and I say, hey, I'm picking someone up, she's on her way. Trying to buy myself some time. That's when I hear my trunk open and I'm so relieved. She jumps in the back and I thought it was a little weird that she's not sitting in the front. But she did take a red eye and I figured she was gonna lay down in the back and go to sleep. So I say something along the lines of, oh, perfect timing, how was your flight? And I couldn't hear her response. It was super loud, with honking and cops shouting, so she closes the door. And I'm focused on trying to find a spot to pull out. I don't even look back, I just say, are you good? And she says, yes. And as I'm pulling out, I'm thinking, wait, she doesn't sound like my girlfriend. So I look in the back and I realize that this woman is not my girlfriend. It's some random teenage girl. I'm freaking out as I'm driving away and desperately looking for a spot to pull over. But by this point, I'm in the middle lane with rushing outflow of traffic. And when I finally saw a space, a cop or a traffic director, I couldn't tell, very aggressively told me that I can't stop there and to keep moving. While I'm trying to pull over, I'm like, who are you? And the girl responds, Molly. I say to her, Molly, I don't know you. What is this? What are you doing? Her reply was, were you expecting to know me? At this point, I'm so confused. My heart's racing. And all I can do is to try not to crash my car because it's 4 a.m. and a strange kid just gets in my car. My first thought was that I was being framed for a crime or something. I didn't know what to think. So I scream at her saying, why are you in my car? I'm pulling over. You have to get out. She says to me, why are you pulling over? I reply, I don't know you. She then says to me, what's going on? Is this because it's a long trip? You can't cancel because of where I'm going. That's not allowed. I then take a few seconds to try to figure out what she's talking about, and then it hits me. I say to her, I'm not your Uber. I'm pulling over. She says to me, you're lying. You knew about this. I say, why would I lie about that? Look on your app. She says to me, you're driving a Toyota Camry. You're my Uber. Don't lie to me. At this point, I just lose it and say, there were a dozen Toyotas back there. How could you get into a strange car without checking first? She then starts crying and I feel bad for snapping and say, look, I'm sorry. I just don't want to appear on the news as a man who drives a teenage girl away from the airport. And you really caught me by surprise and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled. I'm gonna circle back around to the airport. I have to pick my girlfriend up, so I'll bring you back and... She then screams at me, no. I say to her, no what? She says, no, let me out right now. She then starts to grab the door handle of my moving car. And I just scream at her saying, oh my god, what are you doing? She says, I don't know you, you're kidnapping me. And yes, at this point, my worst nightmare is coming true. I say to her, hey, it's okay, it's a mistake, I'm not gonna hurt you, I'm definitely not kidnapping you, I am taking you back to the airport. It's fine, I'm not dangerous, I'm just clueless. Look, we're gonna go back to the airport. See, I'm taking the exit. She then screams at me saying, you knew. I say to her, I knew what? She says to me, you knew you weren't my Uber driver. Why would you let me inside your car? I reply, no, I didn't. I'm taking you to the airport, see? The terminal sign. We're like 3 minutes away, seriously. I'm trying to explain to her, but she just kept screeching stop while in hysterics, like a million times. I say to her, I can't stop here. This is a highway. She's full-blown crying at this point, screaming, stop, let me out. I don't believe you. I'm calling 911 right now if you don't let me out. They'll arrest you. She just continues sobbing, and I say, look, we're a minute from the airport. You can see the terminal. Look, we're going back. So we get there, and I park, and thank God she didn't call the cops. I see so many missed calls and texts from my poor girlfriend, and this girl just bolts out of my car screaming, help! Someone help! I was almost kidnapped. And that's when the cops and the yellow guys in vests, whatever they are, surround my car. I'm then taken in for questioning, and it takes so long that my car is almost towed. Thankfully, they allowed my girlfriend to park it. And thankfully, it created such a spectacle that my girlfriend was able to notice this happening and vouch for me being at the airport to pick her up. Because the alternative was everyone accusing me of posing as an Uber driver to abduct a teenage kid from the airport. By the end, the misunderstanding was completely sorted out, and the girl had calmed down. And her parents over the phone apologized and explained that it's her first time traveling alone and being in a large city, so she was on edge. Now I can look back and laugh, but at the time, it was one of the scariest things that I've ever experienced. And it was months until I could stop my car with the doors unlocked again. Well, that was a panicky situation, guys, on both ends. And honestly, it's better that she got into OP's car and not some random real kidnapper's car, right? And this is why you should always keep your car locked when you're parked. And always make sure you have the correct passenger before driving off. Luckily, it all ended well though, because that could have been horrible for OP. With that said though, like even if OP might have held up a lot of traffic by stopping, he should have stopped right then and there as soon as he figured out the mix-up. It would have saved him a lot of headache. This person shares their comment and says, I got an Uber from JFK and it told me the color, make, and model. Of course, there were 6 identical cars in the pickup lane, so I read the license plates. And this person says, people are effing stupid. I've had 4 grown-ass drunken women just hop right in my car after dropping off my family one night. You just can't drop your guard for a minute these days. Not anywhere. Morons, everywhere you go. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitledpeople episode, where Karens are at it again. They're trying to get everyone arrested. My friends, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.